What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, I'll be talking about some of the big name players that I've been avoiding in drafts and why I've been avoiding them. I shouldn't have to say it at this point, but remember, everyone I talk about in these videos is just going too early in drafts. So in no way am I saying that these players are bad, because they're not. I'm saying they're going too early to be worth taking in drafts this season. Before we start, let's do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which wide receiver led the league in slot snaps last season. The answer was D.D. Westbrook, one of my favorite picks this season, and Preston Weigand got that one right. Today's stat, according to Brandon Thorne, who's someone that I respect for offensive line analysis, the bottom four offensive lines this season are the Cardinals, the Texans, the Dolphins, and what other team? All right, let's start things off with Patrick Mahomes. Now, this shouldn't be a huge surprise to any of our longtime subscribers. You know, I've talked about getting value with every pick and how important the first 4 rounds are for the running back and wide receiver success rates. But above all else, I've talked about how deep the quarterback position is this season. I'm routinely able to get Kyler Murray, Winston, Cousins, Rivers, Prescott, Sam Darnold, not to mention the steal of the draft, Lamar Jackson, in the 12th round and later. This is the single deepest season in the history of fantasy football at the quarterback position. So why in the world would you spend an early round pick on Mahomes? Because maybe you think that you're getting last season's production, but even if you think Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time, then he's still unlikely to produce those numbers again. Among quarterbacks with at least 500 pass attempts in a single season, there have been just 2 years ever with a higher touchdown rate than Patrick Mahomes had last season. Aaron Rodgers did it in 2011 in his MVP season, and then Tom Brady did it in 2007 with his MVP season. That's it. Dan Marino, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Drew Brees, none of those guys have ever had a single season with a touchdown rate like Patrick Mahomes did last season. He also had the 5th most yards per attempt ever. And maybe he's just better than all of those guys. Like, that is possible. But he needs to be a lot better to repeat that season. That was his first year as a starter, and he beat every single season from those guys' careers. And the two that he didn't beat, Rodgers and Brady, well, Aaron Rodgers had a touchdown rate of 9% in that MVP season, which is so far his only year ever above 7.3%. Brady, well, he had a touchdown rate of 8.7% in that MVP season, which was his only season, again, over 7.3%. Their career averages, 6.2 and 5.5. Patrick Mahomes is going to see a reduction in his touchdown rate this season. It's going to happen, and the same is true for his yards per attempt. No one has ever been able to sustain that sort of production for 2 seasons in their career, let alone their first 2 seasons as a starter. So instead of drafting Mahomes in the late 2nd to early 3rd round, which is where he's going on average, despite what you see in our mock drafts, because a lot of our mock drafts are mocking with our subscribers, and we all know to not draft quarterbacks earlier. If you look at industry experts in their mock drafts, well, he doesn't go super early. In your hometown leagues, he's gonna go near his ADP in the late 2nd to early 3rd round. So instead of doing that, just wait and take your favorite late round quarterback, because it's the single best value of any position, and this season, it's the best value of any season ever. Zach Ertz is next, and he's still my tight end 3. So I still like Zach Ertz. He's going to have a good season, and that's where he usually goes, is the tight end 3. But I haven't been drafting him. You know, he typically goes in the late 3rd to early 4th round range, which is insane for a few reasons. The first is obvious regression. Even he has come out and said that he's not going to see anywhere near the volume he did last season. They have Alshon, Deshaun Jackson, Aguilar, Goddard, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Sanders, and Howard on that offense. So unless Wentz goes absolutely nuts this season, there just isn't enough volume for Ertz to pay off where his current ADP is. I might be able to sign off if the position was really weak. You know, the notion around tight end in recent years has been that you need one of the top guys to win. And it's been true. I mean, look at last season. If you didn't have one of the big three plus Ebron and Cook, you probably didn't win your championship. But this year, the position is deeper than you think. There's that trio of Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz, but then there's that next tier of Howard, Ingram, and Henry, which has just as much upside. And then after that, you've got Cook and Vance and Ebron and Njoku and Hooper, who all have ceilings of their own. Now, you might not like all of those guys. I'm sure you don't. But there are definitely a few players in that group that we can all agree are great values. As of right now, the only one of those 8 that I'm personally not taking is Vance McDonald. But there are 10 other tight ends that I've listed out that have massive ceilings, 8 of which come at a better price point than Zach Ertz does. So he's a great player, and he should have a really nice season. But there are a lot of tight ends that I'd rather draft. At 3, we've got Todd Gurley, and I think we can all appreciate why Todd Gurley makes this list. I mean, his knee issue is no secret at this point, but more and more casual players are starting their drafts right now, and so his ADP is getting higher and higher. Now, he's climbed up to 14th overall, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're in your hometown league and he goes at the end of the first round or in that first and second round turn. That's just not a good pick. He could return value there. Like I said earlier this week, anything could happen, but we need to be drafting based off what's likely to happen. We're currently expecting D'Angelo Henderson to get 9 to 12 touches per game. It could be a little below, it could be a little above, but I think that's a really good estimate. Given his struggles learning the Rams' blocking scheme this offseason and this training camp, I expect a decent chunk of those touches to come through the air. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting 12 touches per game through the air. That's just silly. But if he's getting, 5 or 6 carries per game, then maybe he gets a few targets as well. But it's not only D'Angelo Henderson, right? I mean, it's also Malcolm Brown. And I expect Gurley to be out for a few series per game, and they just have Malcolm Brown take over the Gurley role. So that's not just spelling him for a few touches here and there. That's saying, okay, this is Malcolm Brown's series. The entire series, I expect Gurley to be on the sidelines at times this season. Putting all that together, I expect Gurley to be around 13 to maybe 15 or 16 carries a game with about 2 to 4 targets in receiving game. Now, if he hits the higher end of that projection and he stays healthy all season, then he can return second round value, especially in that offense since they're going to score so much. But he doesn't have the last 2 seasons in his range of outcomes anymore. He's not going to see 315 to 350 touches, and his 40 touchdowns over the last 2 years are very likely to come down. Last year, Gurley scored a touchdown on 6.67% of his touches, the 5th highest rate ever among a running back with at least 300 touches in a season. So we have a running back that has a confirmed arthritic component to his knee, which is something that can happen to people after they tear their ACL, is in a confirmed timeshare with 2 other running backs, won't be playing at all this preseason, and will be limited in practice during the regular season, and will see a reduced cap to his touches. Again, he could return second round value if the touchdowns are there, but that's his ceiling. And we don't want to draft players at their ceiling. You want to draft them closer to their average outcome or even closer to their floor. And with so many elite options still available for the entire second round, it's just not smart spending that pick on Todd Gurley. Next, we have Adam Thielen, and he had an amazing start to last year, and then the second half happened. He was the top wide receiver in fantasy over the first 9 weeks, but then was the wide receiver 30 from weeks 10 on, even being outscored by Robert Foster, Adam Humphries, Zay Jones, and Mohamed Sanu, despite playing in every single game last year. Part of this was obvious regression, but part was also the switch to Kevin Stefanski as their offensive coordinator. Now, it's too small of a sample to really trust it a whole lot, but he averaged 4 targets per game under Stefanski, despite 10.8 before he took over. The Vikings also tried to run the ball a lot more with Stefanski at offensive coordinator, and they had some of their lowest plays per game totals as well. One other thing that no one's really talking about is where he's going to play this season, because he saw a reduction in slot snaps under Stefanski, and Chad Beebe, by all accounts, is the Vikings' number 3 wide receiver. Beebe is basically a full-time slot receiver, so Thielen is gonna play outside wide receiver whenever they move into 11 personnel, and we know that slot snaps are much more productive in fantasy. So we should expect his efficiency to drop if he plays fewer slot snaps, the potential for the overall volume of the offense to drop, and the potential to move towards a more run-heavy game script. I'd be okay taking Thielen in like the late 3rd to early 4th round, which is where I have him ranked, which you can see at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, but that's not where he's going. He's going in the late 2nd round, and that's just too early. Mark Ingram is next, and I know I'm basically on an island saying that Mark Ingram just isn't that good of a pick, but I'm just thinking about the upside here, right? I mean, we know that the rush attempts are going to be there. This is a run-heavy offense. He's the lead back. He's going to get his carries. But his rushing touchdowns are a bit capped with Lamar Jackson there, and he has almost no receiving upside at all. I mean, Drew Brees attempted 8.8 passes per game to running backs, which was a 29% target market share. But we know that mobile quarterbacks are not known for throwing to their running backs. And you look at last year, Lamar Jackson attempted just 3.6 passes per game to his running back. We also know that Justice Hill is their 3rd down back. So if anyone's going to get those 3.6 targets, then it's Hill. You know, and Ingram has historically gotten anywhere from 25 to 30% of his total fantasy production from the receiving game. So if that goes away, that's a huge hit. You know, he's also never played outside the Saints' elite offense, and that's not to say the Ravens aren't a good offense, because they are, and I really like them, but they're not the Saints. And also, don't be fooled by Justice Hill's size. He played in 3 preseason games, and he's already evaded twice as many tackles as any other player. In fact, he forced 9 missed tackles on 12 touches in his 2nd preseason game. Mark Ingram hasn't done that in a game in nearly 5 years. Hill is going to take more early down work than people think this season, and Ingram is going in the mid-4th round, but he's going to a worse offensive line. He's going to see a reduction in his passing game, a lower touchdown ceiling, and he has a running back behind him that, quite frankly, is very possibly better than he is. Yet we're taking him a round earlier than we usually do, and I just can't sign off with that sort of logic. So, those are the big name players that I'll be avoiding this season. You can check out the full list of players I'm targeting and avoiding, along with my rankings, projections, and player notes at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.